My name is Feromi Iyoda, and our podcast is an initiative built to create awareness of governance issues that highlight the cost of corruption and its impact on service delivery. It also hopes to promote and encourage the right values that would help to build a society of people with integrity and provide solutions to service delivery challenges faced by everyday Nigerians. So we're assessing the 2023 general elections today, and we're looking at the role of CSOs and the media in ensuring electoral integrity in Nigeria. In the 2023 general elections that took place in February and March, INEC recorded over 90 million registered voters. And that was, an increase as opposed to the last elections. And a lot of that population were young people and youth. As we will discuss today, that did not show a commensurate appearance of people at the polls on election day. And a lot of the reports from both the presidential and gubernatorial and state and national assembly elections seem to have been marred by poor organization, operational failures, and other things that we would likely discuss in this podcast. So we're looking into, and we're speaking with experts today from civil society as well as media who have worked in monitoring the elections and also reporting on the elections. And we'll be hearing from them today on their own assessment of the 2023 general elections. So can my guests please introduce themselves for the sake of our listeners?
Okay, Mbogo Eno is my name, Deputy Director with the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, and also the Head of Elections Projects in West Africa.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Solomon Adoga. I'm a Senior Program Officer with Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and I also coordinate programs for the Transition Monitoring Group, TMG.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nana Hawa Sule. I'm a storyteller and writer. At the time of the elections, I was the lead social media manager for Daily Trust. Currently, I'm the communications person for Liberation Alliance Africa. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nana, and welcome again, everyone. So let's kick off the conversation. I'm starting with Solomon on this. As your experience leading the Transition Monitoring Group along with other CSOs, what is your thought on the 2023 general elections in a nutshell?
All right, so this has been, one tough question to answer since, the roundup of the elections. Generally, I think it's a far cry from our expectation as an organization and even as people, because a lot of support went into the process to ensure that we had a credible election. Unprecedented amount of money was budgeted for the election. We're talking the region of 350 billion naira on the part of government. INEC received unprecedented level of support from local and foreign partners. I know very well that the European Union has a specific support which it calls support to INEC. And you cannot imagine the amount of money that went into that to ensure that Nigeria generally conducts a very credible election in 2023. But those expectations were not met. I don't know if it's because they were too high, but the indicators were there for us to have those expectations. But unfortunately, they were not met at all. So generally, even from the point of factual observations, I mean, it's not so much about the outcome. We are not bothered about who emerged, who won the election. It's the process, because in the end, it's about entrenching a democratic process. In the end, it's about good governance, and you cannot throw in good governance through the back door. It doesn't work that way. So we expected to have a very credible process. We supported the process, but in the end, we did not see that happen. And we think from evidence that this outcome was just an outcome of human interference. We know that if the process had been allowed to play itself out, we would have had a better election. But human interferences here and there thwarted the process in the end.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Solomon, for that candid opinion. Would like to hear from Nana on that as well.
Okay, thank you for your question. I think I agree with Mr. Solomon on a lot of things, but I think that we should also, as much as we can point to the errors, the mistakes that were made, we can also point to some of the things that did happen that was a win for a country like Nigeria, considering our history. For example, we did good when it came to, not even postponing the presidential elections in the first place, because we saw in 2019 it was, shifted and all those things. Despite the insecurity, the fuel scarcity, and, the crunch in Naira, the Naira crunch, and so many other concerns, it still held. And to an extent, it was a bit peaceful compared to some other elections that we've had. It's just sad that the turnout that was expected, like Solomon said, our expectations did not come to fruit. Basically, I think we saw citizens' participation actually in the electoral process as a whole, in terms of even trying to get their PVCs and all those things. I don't know why they didn't come out to vote as much, but I think we did good. It's left so much more to be expected, but we did good in a way.
Thank you. Thank you, Nana. Yeah, that's the point of this, for diversity of opinions. So Umboho, it looks like you've been cooking some thoughts. Would also like to hear from you, your own thoughts on the general election.
Okay, I don't know about the cooking, but my thoughts are pretty simple. The elections left much to be desired. In one way, it's just got to a point where we can say that we have awoken to a new dawn in electoral process management. First, the 2023 Electoral Act brought in officially technological deployment, and that's one thing we need to appreciate about the 2023 elections. And whatever lapses we noticed, we want to believe there are teething problems. But on the other hand, a lot of hopes have been dashed given the fact that we had over a year to prepare for this election since when the act was signed into a law. And we also had the opportunity of experimenting and having full effects what INEC told us in 2019. And while the Electoral Act was being discussed at the National Assembly, they kept saying they were ready. Then we got to the actual thing, and there was a big flop. I think the other thing we also need to understand is that whether INEC likes it or not, they deliberately disenfranchised Nigerians by not deploying materials to the polling units early enough. We have reports, of course, we deployed observers to the field, and we have reports that observers were at their polling units as early as 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. But we also have reports that some polling units did not get their materials until about midday, 1 o'clock. That led to people going back to their houses. And of course, that answers the question Nana asked, that she doesn't know why the turnout was low. People came out in the mornings to vote. INEC officials and materials were not there. People went back to their houses. So it's more of a dashed hope that we had the opportunity to set a golden standard for Africa. And then we decided to do what we call the Nigerian thing. And this is very disheartening. In summary, I would say the elections was both a missed opportunity and also a learning curve for us.
Thank you very much, Bo. Just like you said, I was thinking about my own experience as well. I came out at 7:30. People had already started sharing numbers as it was in most polling units. But INEC hadn't come. I went back home, came back out at 10 o'clock. INEC had still not come. I went back home. And then INEC arrived probably around 11:30. And then, of course, a lot of people went home and didn't come back, but I guess we'll discuss some of the other reasons why that may have happened. So back to Solomon, from the civil society angle, how well would you say that civil society did in ensuring transparency and accountability? A lot of claims around shrouded secrecy around the elections, but how well would you say CSOs did, in monitoring government, keeping them on their toes, ensuring that laws were being obeyed, And what challenges do you think that CSOs faced? And what role, especially the transition monitoring group, played in ensuring this as well?
Okay, so thank you very much. When I talk about so much going into the process, I'm probably talking from the point of our work as an organization and generally the collaborative efforts that we put in as a sector. The pre-election activities, we knew that we needed to move, we needed to have some paradigm shifts. Um, we needed to put certain things in place to account for a credible election. And one of those in itself was, the enactment of the Electoral Act, the amended Electoral Act. So we put so much into that, knowing that we needed to have some of these provisions, backed by the legality of laws, so to speak. And we got that, as tedious as it was. If you recall, it looked like the president wasn't going to assent to that bill. And then you can recall the kind of efforts that the civil society, the media, put in to ensure that we kind of pressured the president to sign in that act. So when that act came, it felt like a new dawn had arrived for Nigeria, that now we had provisions that were going to guide us into conducting very credible elections. So beyond even the reforms that we work toward, so in trying to see how we can even support the process, we deployed. As I speak to you, the Transition Monitoring Group TMG deployed observers across the 774 local governments of Nigeria to observe processes. And then when you talk about some of the challenges that civil society will have, yes, people like to say, funds is very, very important. There's nothing you can do with that money. I wish that we had all the money in the world. We would have deployed better. We would have observed better. But even beyond that, we were able to do, what we did. But the challenge still remains in the fact that, our roles is basically observatory. You observe and you report, and people do whatever they want to do with those reports. That is the end of your role. In understanding that you cannot even ask an officer to say, no, you are doing the wrong thing. You don't have such power as a civil society. You basically just play observatory role. But we've played that role sufficiently. We've educated Nigerians to register and vote. We did our best to mobilize Nigerians to come out and vote. And like Nana said, you saw the surge in registration, in voter registration. You saw enthusiasm in citizens' effort to collect their PVCs, right? So what then happened on the election day? Why did that not reflect? Because for me, in my work, one of the results that I wanted to see was to try to improve, on voter turnout. And I didn't achieve that, as painful as it is. I could not achieve that. So it's painful. But then what caused that? And we need to do those kind of, retrospection to see what happened. And like Mbova said, a lot of logistical failure happened, especially on February 25th, right? So much, and because we were relying so much on first-hand information from our observers on the field, we saw across the country so much failure on the part of logistics. And this particular INEC was not conducting its first election. It's not the first election that Professor Mahmoud Yakubu was conducting. He conducted the 2019 election. He is supposed to have built on lessons that they learned from 2019, with all the support that they had for 2023, to do a much, much better elections in 20. So we need to assess, yes, maybe it is too early at this point, but we need to come out with the reason why the enthusiasm that citizens had towards the election did not manifest on election day in terms of their turnout. But when you talk of civil society effort, I think that we did the optimal best. And even when you gauge the opinion of people in the sector right now, the question is, what more can we do? What else should we have done, to contribute to this process? We did our best, and I do not even want to think that it is the failure of our efforts. It is not a failure of our effort. We've seen how we deployed this law to have a better election in Osun State. We've seen how we deployed the technology to have a better election in Osun State. So we were expecting that would translate to the 2023 election, and unfortunately, we are not able to see that.
Thank you, Solomon. A lot to reflect on. But Nana, I would also like to hear from the media perspective, what were some of the challenges that you think media faced in terms of reporting and telling stories, capturing content, and how well would you say the media performed overall?
Okay, thank you for the question. We'll draw from lessons learned from Daily Trust. The first thing we did, for example, was collaborate with the CDD and even the CJID. It was important for us to educate, first of all. That was pre-elections, educate on the electoral laws, educate on, what even the definition of vote buying is, these terms, electoral terms that people didn't understand, what was considered an offense and what wasn't. I remember we had this Twitter space every Friday, and then we had videos being made on YouTube to be shared on other social handles, just engaging the audience and letting them know what was right, what was their right during the elections, what would be considered offenses, what is considered safe, and how important it was to, not sell their votes. But I feel like Solomon rightly said we were basically observers. Our job there was to go, see, and then tell the stories that we saw. It wasn't to intervene or, maybe it wasn't activism for us in the media. In fact, we were meant to be non-partisan as much as possible to, not be invested in a way that an ordinary, well, not ordinary, a citizen can be. The thing is, however, we noticed there were a lot of things that were noticed, especially in terms of logistics, and also even after the elections itself, uploading the results to the IREV. We tried to follow the results that were being uploaded by INEC, but it wasn't even up to half of the PUs in Nigeria that were uploaded on that system, which in itself is a very big failure on INEC's part. I'm trying to get the statistic. I think about 53,000 were uploaded out of 176,000 plus PUs. You can imagine the difference is very huge. Now you're trying to get credible results to share with your audience, to keep them informed, whereas every other person is telling you, oh, they got this at my PU, they got that at my PU, and results were flying around. We saw that how much momentum Adamawa gained, for example, in the gubernatorial anyways, but it's something that was obtainable in the presidential. People shared so much misinformation that credible media sources and outlets were actually being questioned as being biased and being partisan. But we had to take that blow because we had to wait. Since we couldn't get results from the IREV, we were waiting at collation centers. It was purely what INEC told us or what we heard from INEC directly that we gave our audience. I would say the failure that we encountered was enabled by INEC because they had a lot of time. They had so much time to put in their best to perfect whatever systems and processes that they needed to perfect before this election. But they did not. So you said that we will have these results in real time as they were uploaded on. Why didn't that happen? And now that it didn't happen, who is taking responsibility for that failure? Because things have gone quiet, and the court cases are mostly, oh, this person's party versus this person's party. But I think that an area that media and civil society can explore is to start to hold people, these officials, accountable. Why didn't this happen? Who was responsible for making sure that this happened? They need to explain to Nigerians, because a lot of money, despite the cash crunch, the CBN tried to make cash available for this thing. People left their homes and tried to vote. Even in areas of violence, people still came out and tried to vote, but were discouraged by late coming, by the beavers not working in some places, and it's left a lot to be desired. So I think one area we can explore is trying to hold officials accountable, at least to serve as a deterrent for the future. And then I don't know how we're going to tackle misinformation, because that's a big challenge that I think everyone is facing. So I guess I'll throw it back to Ida Solomon or Ubo, what they think that we can do to tackle misinformation, because you're here trying to give out credible results, and then results are flying around. So what do we do?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Nana. Really, this kind of reflections that are happening on this call are reflections that should be happening, all over in pockets of organizations that were involved in this process, because they would help to improve the process in the future. So, Mboho, I think Nana's opened the door into misinformation. And we're also trying to see, from campaign season to elections proper, again, widespread misinformation. And we're trying to say, why do we think this is? And, how can media and even CSOs ensure that accurate information is being communicated to the public? And what's also your opinion on, the use of technology during these elections? Was it effective in preventing malpractices? And then if you still feel like touching on the challenges, you can go ahead as well. Thank you.
Let me start from when Anna stopped. What can we do about misinformation? I think so far, I would say we're tackling it to the best of our ability as CSOs and as media. At some point, maybe we need to upgrade to. Everybody's talking AI now. Maybe we need to upgrade to AIs. But at the level of humans, I think we are doing our best. Dubawa, a project of the Center for Journalism and Innovation and Development, one of the, I think the foremost indigenous fact-checking platform in Nigeria, did a lot of explainers prior to the elections, active fact-checking while the elections was ongoing. Post-elections, we engaging also in the war against misinformation and disinformation. And during these 2023 elections, we went a step further. I think fact checkers in Nigeria went a step further by forming the Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition. So they did all they could to pull resources together to battle this concepts as they were springing up all through the elections. Don't forget they were there through all the primary debates that were being done. It didn't matter which faction was holding, which organization was hosting. I mean, they were there. They showed how non-partisan they were in being present and available to work with everyone that deemed it fit to serve the Nigerian people. But why do we keep having misinformation being churned out on a daily basis? Of course, that's the job of politicians. I think Nigeria has not gotten into a point where we are very sincere with discussing policies rather than through propagandas. I know the next person would say even in the US there are propagandas that are being thrown, there are misinformation that are being churned out. But I think it's just the natural instinct of politicians to just cause a little rattling. To them, it's part of the game. But in the larger ecosystem, it's discrediting the entire process. I mean, in the elections so far, we see that when the process gets to the point of counting and results release, that's when we notice a huge spike in the volume of misinformation that comes out because everybody wants to claim victory And when the result is not favoring your candidate, it becomes like, oh, INEC or the ad hoc staff are working in collaboration with opponent and all of that. So I think it's just about for us to be able to stem the tide of misinformation is for us to get back to political parties and tell them, hey, you guys need to play by the rules. Or we need to get to the point where we can begin to find political actors when uh, they throw these propagandas. We need to get to a point where we can, as Nana said, hold people responsible, individuals. So if my party, for example, Patimbo, decides to throw a propaganda using one of my supporters, someone, either the supporter or the party, should be held liable for such. That's the only way we can begin to cut this, reduce the tide in misinformation. And don't also forget that government also trades in misinformation a lot. Some of this misinformation actually come out from government themselves. To what end, I may not be able to answer, but I think they are the chief propagandists in terms of peddling misinformation and disinformation. So let me quickly jump to technological use. Yeah, we saw as we spoke about earlier, we saw for the first time officially uh, technological deployment being acknowledged because before now we've been experiencing the gradual introduction of technology from the 2010 Act. That's when we got, I think, the direct data capturing process in 2011. We got the card reader, smart card reader in 2015. And then we've upgraded to using the beavers and the IRF. So we have consistently improved in our technological deployment. And this election, I am of the opinion, was able to actually bring out the actual number of voters that come out to vote in Nigerian elections. Don't forget, before now, we've always had incident forms. So even if you don't come, incident form will be filled for you, and that adds up to the number. Incident form for this election was totally cancelled. So if we said that we had 27 million people that voted, then we can actually say in reality 27 million people voted. And the clause in the electoral act that acknowledges overvoting did not say overvoting is total number of people registered in a polling unit. That clause has changed to total number of people that are collected PVC and then that got accredited. The fact that we are relying on a machine and a technology that has proven to be reliable, being the beavers for accreditation. So if the total number of people accredited is lower than the number of votes count at the end of the day, then we can say this overvoting. But I mean, these technologies, I would say, good for the elections. They are good advancements in our electoral process. We only beg and plead with the guys managing the affairs of the election. Allow the system to work. It doesn't make practical sense that the same machine that was used to transmit National Assembly election results is not able to transmit presidential results. It doesn't make any technological sense. I mean, what are you going to explain? It's the same machine, so the same elections, the same day, the same set of humans that are uploading, are interfacing with this technology are the same people. So why should we have a National Assembly elections that is smooth, uploaded in real time, and then it comes to presidency? I mean, you tell us there's no code. So we have gotten to the point where we need to consciously reduce the level of human interference in our electoral process, and that is going to build more trust and more confidence. How did we even get to the point where we have so many people going out to register for their PVC in the first place? Remember Ekiti, when the Beavers and IRF was fully deployed post the 2022 Electoral Act signing, the turnout in Ekiti wasn't that good. But the trust and the confidence of the people was built because they saw how the Beavers and the IRF was transparent. We got to Oshun, we had a slightly higher turnout, and it turned out to also be good. I mean, it was reliable. The confidence of citizens was being built. That was also used in other elections that occurred within the year. And then suddenly we get to the to the general elections. Everything seems to be turned upside down. It's just human interference that is not that is leading to the eroding of trust in the electoral process. So it's like we are going a mile ahead and then we decide to take 2 miles back. Because for civil society and the media that have consistently engaged in trust building on behalf of the electoral umpire, it means we have to go back to square one and start building the level of confidence again. That's a huge task. That's a huge task. And just as Nana said, we need to get the people involved in this coup, because this is coup against the people by the electoral umpire. We need to punish the people that led this coup. Thank you.
The key thing, that you said, allow the system to work. And I think that's what majority of Nigeria's youth have clamored for before the elections, during and even after. Just you've put some good systems in place. Let the systems do what you've put them in place to do. So what lessons have we learned? We did all this observation. What are some key lessons that we've learned that will be relevant to like INEC or non-state actors, international community to consider for future elections? And what can CSOs do to improve transparency in this electoral process in the next elections?
Thank you very much. I don't think we should miss some of the things that these two speakers have, spoke about. Nana raised the flip side of these elections, especially around the results, right? And that was as a result of INEC's failure to deploy technology efficiently. Now, one of the things that we did not see was these fake results flying about, especially in social media. And why was that? Because INEC fully deployed IREF. And because INEC fully deployed IREF, it accorded civil society organizations, the media, to collaborate together. I recall that Yaga Africa and Channels Television ran a program through election, and they were relying on results from IREF. So they deployed people to aggregate polling unit results in real time, and they were broadcasting on national television. So people from social media were also feeding from there. So you were getting credible results. So that is how well we could have used IREF in the 2023 general election. And it was so painful that organizations like ours actually deployed data clerks to try to interact with the IREF portal, and it now looked like it was just effort in futility. We deployed in vain in that regard. Mbo has spoken so much about human interference. So we saw technology work to the extent that they were allowed to work, just to the extent that they were allowed to function. Otherwise, how would you explain the same machine transmitting elections results for parliamentary elections and not so for the presidential election? So in terms of lessons learned, and I must stay on course with Nana's submission, which Mbuhu also concurs with, we need to arrest these people who are hijacking the process. Clearly, there are people who are determined to hijack the process. And when they are allowed to hijack the process, no matter the reforms that you do, it will not come to fruition. You will not harvest your results. So we need to be able to, at this point in time, I don't know how we'll do it. I don't know if it is a function of the civil society, because even the civil society at this very point is disillusioned. But then, this may be what the politicians want. The mind of the politician is completely different from how, let me not use the word, how you and I would think. They are very disruptive in their thinking so far as it tilts to their interests. And we've seen this. We are even continuing to see this post-election. So we cannot allow these guys. And in terms of how we can curb this misinformation for civil society, I don't think there's any other way to go than expand on the fact-checking efforts that were put on ground, like Mbogo mentioned. There's no other way. So we need to expand on this. We need to bring in more organizations to do fact-check, because the politicians will always misinform people. They control the media space. They are the ones who own media houses. Even the social media that you would think is a free for all, they are now deploying so-called influencers to do their bidding. So they are hijacking everywhere, and we must not allow this hijack to continue. For now, INEC has asked everybody to go to court, whether the commission had the right to jettison the process of transmitting results electronically to relying solely on manual collation of results. We are going to find out from judicial interpretation. But basically, civil society must stay action. We must stay on course. This is now time for us to even put more effort on ground. If we need to do more reforms, we need to get them done. Because no matter what the outcome of that interpretation will be, the way forward will be that we have it as statutory, that you must transmit results electronically, even if you want to do manual transmission as well. Because the whole concept of technology is to remove as much as possible human interference from the process. So civil society, we must stay on course, and we must continue to campaign when the time is right. I know that at this point, everybody is trying to heal from the outcome of that election. But when the time is right, I think we all need to go back again, strengthen our campaign. We've seen the gaps. We might need to go back, do some kind of reforms, look at our law, all right, to see where the politicians are digging loopholes, to do some of the things that are doing, to see that we block those loopholes.
Thank you very much, Solomon. Thank you for that submission. I'll go back to Nana for this. What other lessons do you think actors and non-state actors as well, and what can the media do to improve this transparency in the coming elections?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, I was a bit worried, or not just a bit, I'm actually quite alarmed by the level of misinformation, especially on social media. You see, every reputable radio house or television or newspaper will sit down and make sure that their stories check. We even have a responsibility as a journalist. Even if someone says this person does A, even if it's a crime, you're supposed to reach out to A and find out from A what happened. You're supposed to get your facts right no matter what. But then you see social media is no man's land, really. Nobody holds you accountable. Every random person can just wake up and be like, you know what, I'm going to put this out. And for whatever reasons, for whatever the thought process is, we saw the video of Peter Obi campaigning for Atiku from way back in 2019. It surfaced just around the election corner. The voice note on Atiku, most recently also the leaked voice note of Peter Obi and the whole Yes Daddy saga. The issue is I am very worried as regards what this means for our privacy as citizens in this country. Because if people can have so much access, whether for propaganda or for whatever, to personal conversations to closed door meetings and all those kind of things. What does it say for our privacy laws? So it's quite alarming. Are they going to maybe this conversation cut it into pieces and then put it together and upload it? So much to think about. I think we have to sit down and confront what kind of future we want as citizens, as Nigerians, as a country as a whole. Because the thing is, we are very divided, no matter how much we do not want to say that we are. We are divided along the lines of ethnicity, along the lines of religion, and these are division lines that the politicians capitalize on and help us create chaos that makes systems go bad in a sense. But I don't think, like I said in the very beginning, that everything is negative, negative, negative. I think that like Mboho said, perhaps this is the elections where Nigerians actually voted. Because you can see, for example, in Lagos, Peter Obi won in Lagos, in, dare I say, Tinubu's Lagos, where MC, what's that guy's name now? MC Olu something. Yeah. In Buhari's Kasina, Atiku won. You get, in the government house, Erufai's, will I say, his palace, he lost. He lost the APC ticket. So these are things that let you know that the system can work if it's given a chance to. And perhaps this is the one time that Nigerians actually actively participated in the elections. And it makes us have hope for the future, it means that, like, I'm not sure if it's Solomon or Umboho who said it, there's an awakening that has happened with Nigerians. There's that interest in who's leading us, in kicking out who has done bad, and putting someone who they hope will do well. As media persons or civil society persons, we're not particular about who wins or who doesn't win. We're just saying that let us have a process that works, put in place systems that work, and INEC should take a lot of lessons from now. If they need to get consultants, if they need to, I don't know, revamp the whole system they have to dismantle what they have and look at how they have done in the past and what they can do for the next elections. They have to sit down, and figure out. IREF didn't work well. Even the beavers didn't work in some places. How can we ensure that this doesn't happen again? There were still cases of vote buying, still people who even showed their ballot paper, displayed it. How do we educate people that this is wrong, this is right, this is what to do, this is what not to do? They have to sit down. And perhaps what we can do is to start putting pressure earlier on, because it feels like they just sit down and then maybe some 6 months or 3 months to elections, then they decide, oh, let's rush through this whole process. Right now, maybe when they are done with the court cases through this year, they have next year and 2-3 more years to plan effectively, which still boils down to us having punitive measures in place for electoral officials who do not do their jobs. We need to stop approaching it like it's a thing that is forgivable. It's not like someone went to steal or something from another individual. No, you're robbing Nigerians of their rights. Then you need to explain why. And you need to be punished for your part or your inactions or your actions in it. So these are some of the lessons that we can learn. But with regards social media, I don't know, especially in terms of misinformation, I really don't know how, because on one side we have to agree that people have a freedom to express themselves on this platform. But I guess now it's trying to find balance and how to ensure that they use social media responsibly, that Nigerians use social media responsibly. So I don't know how we're going to do that without turning into some, authoritarian system or society. But I think Nigeria is on a good path, and I think that more Nigerians are interested in the electoral process, and that's a very good thing. If for nothing, just having this, it's a very good thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nana. Like you said, Stop Nigeria worked with first-time voters in Nasarawa and Lagos over the election, sensitization, education, and ensuring people actually, act with integrity. And what you said at the end is really what it is, ensuring that people know that their voices matter, but also trying to create that balance of information. Finally, to Mboho, yeah, just your quick thoughts on any lessons that can be learned and recommendations for, CSOs, media, INEC, and what can be improved ahead of the next elections.
Thank you. I think I want to start with the fact that since we started this conversation, we seem to be focused on the February 25th elections, and then we forget that there was a March 18th election that, I mean, honestly, if that was election, and then I wonder what war is in some part of the nation. The March 18th election was literally war. And that's not how an election should run. So during the presidential election, we were commending security, we were commending, the security actors, especially for being civil. And then we got into the March 18th election, and the same guys we were commending on the 25th of February became like tyrants. This is not how an election should run. Our press attack tracker recorded about 35 attacks on journalists. That's a huge number for an election. We deployed observers. I mean, I have observers that we had to get someone, had to pull our network to go and extract from the field and rush to the hospitals. We had observers like that. We had cases in Akwa Ibom. We had a case in Abia where the observer was practically kind of kidnapped by a political actor. The one in Kogi was thrown outside of a moving car, having caught a so-called distinguished honorable member of the Federal House of Representatives, Abuja, Nigeria, sharing money, and the so-called honorable member in Kogi State wasn't happy that he was caught on camera sharing money. So practically, I don't know if that's kidnapping, but practically held the guy hostage in his car and was driving him around from polling unit to polling unit, still sharing money. But seized his phone, broke his phone, and before breaking the phone, formatted his phone. So we don't have that evidence. But what we have is that he was threatened to be killed. Only that the same one of the orderlies of the he says is a police officer had to appeal to his principal, let's just drop off this guy. And of course, he was thrown out of the moving car. We had to get someone to go take him to the hospital. If civil society observers who are harmless and journalists who do not have any weapon get into a situation where their only responsibility is just to look and speak, they are not allowed to do anything, can get into this level of harassment and assault. I think we need to review the modus operandi for our security operatives on election day. I know the law says no politician should move around with his orderly, but we have a case in Kogi State, and surprisingly, the honorable member had lost his re-election bid on 25th. So I think it's part of the annoyance that, okay, you guys did this. Okay, so I'll deal with you guys. So he decided to vent his anger on an innocent observer. And let's not even talk about what happened in Lagos. I mean, Lagos has been overflogged. That's why I'm bringing examples from other states that we seem to have forgotten. There were a lot of assaults and harassment on journalists. We had a case also of one of our observers who was accosted by DSS in Lagos, and the evidence of vote buying and all of that was deleted from his phone by DSS officers. Okay, by law, they're not DSS. By law, they're SSS. So, by the SSS officer, let's call them the name that is recognized by law. So we had cases like that. We had cases in Edo, and we had, don't forget, there was House of Assembly elections in Edo, but was worse than a governorship election. So we had cases like this. So one thing we need to do is that for journalists and observers, for civil society and media houses, we need to at some point begin to review the safety of our men and women on the field. And I don't know, I don't think just insurance is enough for them. But we also need to begin to get to the point where when we have concrete evidence like names, organizations, faces of perpetrators, we need to begin to sue these people and these institutions. I think when we get to that point, we can begin to see some civility on their own part. They were not just state actors that were fomenting this trouble. There were non-state actors. The guy in Akwa Ibom, one of the guys in Akwa Ibom that was beaten, was actually by non-state actors, but in the presence of police. So we need to begin to talk to ourselves. It's an election. It's not war. Yes, your candidate must win. In every election, there must be winners and there must be losers. We need to come to the point as Nigerians of accepting both sides of divide. And as the Constitution also understands that there will be winners and there will be losers, there will be aggrieved and there will be those that are happy. There's a provision for addressing grievances. Let's explore that. It's an election. It's not a war. But we need to have that a reprogramming of our mind to see that the harm we're causing can at some point come back and affect us. So that's one thing I also wanted to bring up so that we can probably maybe in another episode talk about the pains of the guys we sent on the field, to cover as journalists and as observers the elections. A lot of things happen to them. A lot of experiences they have to share. But because we just see them, their own role is simple, just to look and report. But in the process, they're getting attacked. They're getting assaulted. They're getting manhandled and all of that. So what's my recommendation going forward? I think, first, the recruitment process for an INEC chairman and the resident electoral commissioners needs to be reviewed. We have a crop of resident electoral commissioners presently who were known and are known to be partisan, which is against the rules of engagement and the law setting up the INEC. Anyone that should be appointed into this position should be non-partisan. But we have card-carrying members of political parties occupying these offices. You cannot totally blame an INEC chairman who has refused to obey the rules because he was appointed by someone who also has the powers to remove him. So maybe we need to review the process of appointment of INEC chairman. And then these resident electoral commissioners, by law, are appointed by the president, not by the chairman. So they cannot be responsible to the chairman. The chairman can't remove them or suspend them. I mean, I don't know about suspension, but he can't remove them because he didn't appoint them. So maybe we need to look at the recruitment process again and see how we can tweak that to make INEC more independent in terms of recruitment, in terms of resources. Yes, the new Electoral Act has made some provisions for resource availability and all provisions and all of that. And we also need to have a post-mortem for every election. And where faults are found, where officials are found guilty, we keep saying punished. They should be punished. The problem with Nigeria is not the lack of law. or rules. The problem with Nigeria is that we don't have punitive measures. We rather reward people that err with accolades, and then we deride people that are truthful, which shouldn't be the case in a sane society. So we need to apportion the blames accordingly, and then we also need to show good examples of good returning officers, good resident electoral commissioners. That woman, that professor woman in Abia, that's a good example of a returning officer who insists on following the rules. We need to celebrate such people.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you. I would like, if we can, just 1 minute each, because a lot of our first-time voters who we spoke to after the elections are almost demoralized and have sworn, that they will never vote again in another election because their votes didn't count. So in 1 minute, we've already spoken about like the despondency in the atmosphere. Everyone is disillusioned. Level of confidence in government, in processes, in INEC has dropped. What would you say in 1 minute to, first-time voters and Nigerians in general? Where do we go from here? And what's your encouragement for people? So let's start with Nana.
I'd say actually that to not lose faith. I don't want to sound like Martin Luther King, but I do have a dream that Nigeria is going to be a great country, at least greater than where we are now. But I think that collectively we have to stop looking at Nigeria like an inheritance, like something we've inherited from our forefathers that we can do it however we want. We have to look at it, as something we're going to leave for our children, for the next generation. And when you put that into perspective, whether you're a politician or you're a cobbler, whoever you are, when you put that into perspective, I think it will help us, go back and rethink, what are we doing in the next 10, 20, 50 years? Are our children going to be proud of this country? Are they going to want to stay in this country? I'd say don't lose faith, because we have a lot of work to do. Right now, yes, I know tensions are high, tempers are high. People are angry, and feel they have been mistreated, feel that things have gone poorly. But we have to find a way to channel all that into preparing for the future. And we can't do that if we keep fighting ourselves. So we have to stop with the throwing of attacks between the North, the South, Christians, Muslims, and all that. We have to come together because, like they say, the popular African proverb, if you want to break a broom, you can break them in, strands, but together you can't break them. We really have to come together. Look at has put us together. It has happened. So let's just try to make the best of it so far now. So I think that's what I'm going to say to first-time voters and to Nigerians as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana. Let's get your final words, Solomon.
Yeah, I mean, in the same line, quite understandably, citizens are disillusioned at the moment. And for us, as people who educate citizens, we need to sit back now and redesign the language that we have to speak to citizens to, reawaken them again, because we cannot communicate in the same language that we did in time past. The environment is totally different now, and we have to re-strategize in terms of communication with citizens to get them to believe again. And so one thing that I like hearing, which I've been hearing from the president-elect, is the fact that he understands that we need to rebuild a nation. And so if he comes in and takes that on board, it will be one which will be very much appreciated, because Nigeria needs a rebuilding at this point in time. If he helps us to do that, we can have a voice to convince citizens again to believe in the system. But at the moment, we need to find the right language to speak to citizens.
Thank you very much, Solomon. And final words from Mboho.
So 2023 was my first time voting. I woke up and got to the polling unit as early as 6. By 9 o'clock, INEC had not arrived. So I went to work. I came back by about 1 o'clock and I stayed on queue, and I was finally able to vote about 4:33 p.m. That was my experience as a first timer. So what would I say to other first time voters? We have to re-energize, we have to reboot, we have to go back and join the queue and continue voting. Don't be dismayed about with whatever happened or whatever is happening now. I think it's just it's the right thing that is happening. The players know that the game is changing or the game has changed. So we're going to we can only get better. And just like Liverpool will say, you never walk alone. So dear Nigerians, you are not walking alone. Let's work on this together as a united country and see to it that every election you participate in a non-violent way. That's very important. And also speak up for the people that are being harassed, manhandled, and rough-handled during the electoral process. They need your voices to stay active on the field, especially the people who are representing you, to watch how the process is going. The players don't want them on the field. So you have to be a voice for them to continue to serve you better. I look forward to, I joined Nana to say, I have a dream of a better Nigeria. And also don't forget that in this country, we never walk alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mboho. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Solomon, so much for your time. It was really an enjoyable conversation, and I'm sure that our listeners will listen to this. You can also just quickly kindly share like your social media handle so that our listeners can follow you later for your organization as well, if that's something you want to do. So let's start with Nana again.
Social media platforms are at Izesule, IZE. Please follow Daily Trust for those who, though I'm no longer with them, but they did a really beautiful job. Their Daily Trust, daily_trust across all social media platforms. And follow my current organization. We have a lot of things in store for you. At Liberation AA across all social media handle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nana. Solomon, please.
Okay, so you can follow me on Twitter at Soulman. Then you can also follow Sislak. Sislak is at Sislak Nigeria on Twitter. And you can follow at TMGNG on Twitter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Mboho, please.
Okay, you can follow me on Twitter at Eno Mbogo, and you can follow CGID at CGID Africa. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your time, and our listeners. Remember to follow Step Up Nigeria on Instagram and Twitter at step_up_Nigeria. And you can also follow Step Up Nigeria on LinkedIn, on TikTok at Step Up Nigeria. And this podcast will air on YouTube at Step Up TV, as well as on all podcasting platforms. Please let us know your thoughts. Let's engage in the conversation. You've heard their social media handles. Tag them as you have comments or thoughts on the things and the issues discussed here today. A big thank you again to my guests, Nana Sule, Solomon Adoga, and Mboho Eno for your time and for your contributions on this. Thank you.